In today's video, we're taking a look at some off-season trade rumors, which could see a very busy goaltending carousel with lots of goalies possibly being traded, as well as free agency. Could be tons of movement. Plus, what is up with Robin Lehner and the Vegas Golden Knights? Is he done for the season, or is he not? There's conflicting reports, and it's hard to say what's going on. Plus, we have updates on some injuries, some more milestones, and more. And that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news, rumors, and updates to talk about here today. First up, a couple quick items when it comes to some injuries. Looks like we're going to see a few players returning tonight. Austin Matthews, after missing 3 games for the Leafs, will be back tonight. So obviously I know a lot of people were somewhat concerned, even though the Leafs downplayed the injury and said if it was a playoff game he'd be playing, which is fine, but still it goes to show that they want to get him 100% ready for the playoffs, which is good, but, sometimes when it drags on, it kind of makes you wonder. But he's back, so everybody can rest and relax. And he will continue to push to see if he can hit 60 goals here before the season is over. It looks like Thomas Chabot will make his return from a hand injury for the Senators tonight. It looks like he's been activated off IR to participate against the Montreal Canadiens this evening as well. So a couple of big players for the respective teams coming back. Of course, we saw another big milestone last night in Minnesota. Kirill Kaprizov hits 100 points. First time in Wild franchise history they've had a 100-point player. And Kevin Fiala in the same game had 5 assists. He's been absolutely on fire lately. I think he's like 21 points in 9 games or something ridiculous. It's just been absolutely on fire. Good time to be hot when we're getting close to the playoffs. I know the Minnesota-St. Louis series is the only series confirmed up to this point in time, but it does look like St. Louis has handled Minnesota real well. But when you see games like this and these guys just flying out there, but at the same time the Blues, it's going to be a very interesting series. I think even though Minnesota has a shot at maybe being a higher ranked team because the standings are tight, it looks like the Blues might be the favorite. I don't know, it's hard to say where that series is going to go, but the way Fiala and Kaprizov and a few others on that team have been playing, it's kind of hard to bet against them. So we'll see where things go, but certainly lots to be happy and excited about for Wild fans, that's for certain. And we saw another big milestone last night. The Andrew Ladd 1,000 game finally takes place in the Arizona Coyotes organization. Of course, Ladd's been in the NHL a long time, and a lot of players would have hit this long ago, but he's missed so much time due to injuries over the past 3 or 4 seasons that it's taken a long time, and I think it's probably fair to say in his mind, he probably wondered if it would ever actually come. So congratulations to Ladd for hitting the milestone. And of course, in the same game, we also saw Boko Imama make his NHL debut. We don't often make a big fuss to talk about them, but Boko certainly fared, had a tough battle to make it to the NHL. I know I've seen him play locally here in junior for the St. John Sea Dogs, he was a really solid junior player. But he's dealt with his fair share of racism and incidents over the years and had to battle through a lot of adversity in that respect. After getting drafted, he finished out his junior career, worked his way through the East Coast League, American Hockey League team, got traded from LA to Arizona. So he's bounced around a lot and really put in his dues a lot in the minor leagues. Good definition of perseverance. And after all the adversity he's faced as well, I just wanted to mention his NHL debut and congratulate him on that. It's great to see him finally get to the big show and get an opportunity like that. We also saw another odd injury last night, which was Pavel Francouz for the Colorado Avalanche, who was actually not even playing, which is even more odd. But of course, being on the bench, he ended up getting hit in the head with a puck on the bench. Now, I tried to find a replay. I wasn't able to. I didn't see that happen live. I was watching a different game at the time when it took place. But it doesn't sound good. He had to leave the bench, wasn't able to return. So there's certainly a little bit of concern over him. They had to make a call up to replace him. So hopefully he'll be good to go before the playoffs. But I don't know if it's, hopefully it didn't lead to a concussion or anything like that, because you don't know when anytime you get hit in the head. It's just hard to say. I haven't seen the Avalanche really update much in that regard, so we'll have to wait and see what they have to say about that. But speaking of injuries, the big question mark or secrecy or whatever you want to call it here, conflicting reports out of Vegas, which I don't seem to get, but there was reports from ESPN and Emily Kaplan, who's a respectable reporter, normally always very accurate with their info, says that Robin Lehner was going to be having surgery and would be done for the season. We know that he had battled through a shoulder injury earlier in the year. There was a lot of talk, I know, from Frank Zaravalli and a few other reporters that it was a bad shoulder injury. It might be a torn labrum and could require off-season surgery, but they were hoping that he could battle through and take care of that in the off-season instead of shutting it down. But then he later hurt his knee back in, I think it was sometime in March and apparently that injury was pretty significant as well. And the ESPN report just said that he's been doing his best, trying to play through it. It's certainly impacting his play, but his body just can't take it, and he's opted to shut things down, have his surgery, and be done for the year. But then, not long after that report came out, talking to head coach Peter DeBoer in a pregame availability, he was saying that as far as he knew, that wasn't accurate, and he was expecting Lehner at practice today. So, okay, there's a big difference between saying I expect him to be at practice as compared to he's having surgery, he's done for the season. We know we've seen some comments from DeBoer kind of calling out Lehner, and if he knew he was going through all these injuries, I don't know why he would call him out like that. You think he'd be a little bit more protective of his goaltender, but we've seen how things go in Vegas, and I'm not really fond of how players have been kind of treated out there. I mean, we saw what happened with Fleury. We see a lot of negative hate online against Robin Lehner. I've seen a lot of fans talking about the fact that he's been so open with his mental health struggles and everything, just really just tearing him to shreds over that. I can't believe the negativity towards this guy. He's a tremendous goaltender. He's a good role model. He's somebody you should be proud to have on your team. And now here we are again with another, potential goaltending controversy on our hands. Logan Thompson, the young goalie, certainly stepped up and has been more effective lately, that's for sure, but he's also not dealing with what Robin Lehner is dealing with as well. So I don't know. It's probably fair to say that Lehner likely is done. Now today I've seen reports from practice before recording this saying that Lehner was not at practice, that there was Logan Thompson and somebody is E-Bug, an emergency backup was there. So to me it looks like the ESPN reports are correct, but how and why Peter DeBoer wouldn't comment, I mean, it's not a big deal. If he's done, he's done. I don't understand the big conflicts in discrepancy in reporting between the two, but it does look like Robin Lehner is done. And to be honest, based on comments from the coach and how everything's gone, I can't help but wonder if they will consider a Lehner trade in the offseason. But that's going to be tough to do if he's going to be having, one or two pretty significant surgeries here. So I don't know. It just is mind-baffling. Hard to say what's really going on there. But speaking of goalies and active goalie market, certainly want to talk more about goalie trades here today. I came across an article talking about some goalies that likely are going to be dealt this offseason. Some of these we've talked about a bit before, but just to kind of put it into context here, there's a lot of activity. We know there's a handful of really interesting free agent goaltenders. You get Ville Husso in St. Louis, who's been arguably better than Binnington this season. Binnington has been much better as of late. So we'll see how things go in the playoffs. Will they go to the experienced Binnington, or will they give the youngster Husso a chance? I don't know what they're going to go in what direction there, but Binnington's lately has been a lot better. So, they've been winning. So that's good news for them. I don't know, it might be a good problem to have, but I don't think they really want to lose Husso as a UFA. But he's played well enough that he can command a decent amount of money, so that's going to be tricky. Of course, you get Darcy Kemper in Colorado. You got Marc-Andre Fleury in Minnesota. And I'm sure there's others out there that I'm missing right now, but those are some of your top guys that are, UFAs that could be moving based on that status. And then you've got Chris Driedger in Seattle is likely going to be made available after signing a 3-year contract coming over from the Florida Panthers last year. It's fair to say this year has not gone as planned. Even Philip Grubauer has not been as good as they were hoping. Some of it, to some degree, is the team in front of them, but I think the goaltending wasn't really where it needed to be. I think it's definitely they thought going into this year that they were going to be a real solid defensive team with good goaltending. They would probably have a little bit of trouble scoring. That was going to be their downfall. I think they knew that, and then they recognized that. That's what a lot of the experts thought. I know that was kind of my take on it, looking at it too. So, if Driedger and Grubauer play up to their capabilities, that should be a pretty good tandem. And then based on their decor that they drafted and signed, it's okay, they might not be the best in the league or anything like that, but they should be pretty solid defensively, even if they're middle of a pack in the NHL. But based on the players they had in the forward and center positions, you certainly expected some some scoring droughts and some a little bit of difficulty putting the puck in the net, especially with Yanni Gourde starting the season on IR and things like that. It's like, okay, well, they'll get there, but it's going to be a challenge. But it didn't go that way. They were way worse than many of us thought they would be. A lot of people had them at least challenging or coming close to playoffs, and there's nowhere near it. Goaltending has not been good. Driedger is certainly taking a step back, but like I cautioned before, is like as much as he was really good in Florida for a couple of years, he really didn't play that much. It was only less than 30 games. So it was a small sample size, and he had a really good team in front of him. So, I don't know. I think a fresh start for him might be good. And I think if he could get on a stronger team in the backup role, that it might be something that might be more likely that would better suit him and the Kraken as well. I'm sure Grubauer, with the longer-term contract he signed, will get another opportunity to continue to be the guy there in Seattle. Of course, you have Peter Mrazek in Toronto, pretty much a given. He's done there to, within all their capabilities of moving on from that contract. Dubas will do everything he can, whether it be a buyout or trade. It's likely coming to be. Mrazek will not be a Leaf next year. I think that's pretty safe to say. Hard to say where he could go. But I know a team like Buffalo, Chicago, a place like that might be a good landing spot given the fact of where their things are at in their organizations, going through rebuilds. They need goalies with experience. They're not going to be as picky and need something that's higher end than some other teams. So he might be an option for those guys. Alexander Georgiev, the Rangers goaltender, who made it clear about a year ago that he wanted to trade, and it's never come to be. So certainly I think it's fair to say they want to hang on to him for this playoff run. But they're going to have a real tight cap situation like a lot of teams, and they're going to need to shed some salary. Igor Shesterkin, by far one of the top goalies in the NHL, has the starter's job on lockdown, so there's no need for Georgiev to continue pushing for that. It makes sense for him to move on, for them to save some money and get something in return. You got John Gibson in Anaheim. Could he find himself on the go? We've talked about him a few times lately on how the Ducks were certainly willing to listen on potential Gibson deals, and obviously they're going through a bit of a rebuild after all the trades they made. This is not what Gibson signed up for. I think he wants to be in a more competitive situation, is what NHL insiders seem to think and report, and it makes sense that a Gibson trade very well could be something we see this summer as well, and it could be a first-round pick and a prospect. Hard to say where he could go, but I know a team like the Oilers has come up, but hard to say how that would work out if they have the assets to make it happen. And I wonder about Jonathan Quick as well. I mean, there hasn't really been much in the rumor mill regarding the Kings and their goaltending, but Cal Peterson's contract kicks in next year. The extension he signed was over $5 million. Quick will have 1 year left on his deal, but the problem here is that Quick has been the better goaltender this year, and it's a big part of the reason why the LA Kings are in a position right now to likely take a playoff spot. Much as long term, I think they still have faith and believe in Cal Peterson. Obviously, they wouldn't have signed him to that contract, but at the same time, are they in a position to let him take over the reins and have somebody else be the backup after his performance this season? It's really kind of hard to see that, but at the same time, like everybody else, they need the cap space. They're going to have young guys starting that need to get paid as well. They want to make improvements in other areas. We know the Kings likely want to add another experienced defenseman. And it's just hard to say what direction they go in here. And I said, I just wonder if getting the contract off the books would be something they would consider doing. I mean, he doesn't have trade protection in his contract either, so it's easy for them to pull off. And the way he's played this year, with 1 year left on his contract, I have no doubt there would be a fair bit of interest around the NHL. Of course, we've talked about as well in Montreal. We don't know what's going to happen there with Price and Allen. I think it's fair to say one of the two likely moves on, and the other one forms a tandem with Samuel Montembeault. I think that's pretty safe to say. They have Caden Primo there as the number 3 who can play in Laval and continue to work on becoming the goaltender of the future and developing his craft. So hard to say what they do. Price's contract will make things very difficult to move, as we've talked about before. Plus, he has full say because of his contract and the no move clause, whereas Jake Allen doesn't have any trade protection. Based on his play with the contract he has, would be a lot more something that teams would have interest in. Certainly, I mean, he has played up to that standard and better in a tough season for Montreal, where he had to carry the bulk of the load with Carey Price being out majority of this season. And of course, the other big name that keeps resurfacing here in the rumor mill is Winnipeg Jets center iceman Mark Scheifele, who's going to have 2 years left on his contract at $6.1 million. Approaching 30 years old soon. The Jets certainly could stand to retool here. I think what they have for their key core players, it just has not worked here. over the last 2-3 seasons now. I think it's time to do something different. Kind of half wonder about the future of Kevin Cheveldayoff as well. We don't really have any indication that he's in hot water, but you got to think that it might be time for change in that regard. But regardless of who's at the helm there in that regard, there's a lot of rumors that Scheifele could be dangled this year. He's got a pretty good contract. He still gives you a lot of points. He's a point-per-game player for the most part, with a lot of experience. Real student of the game, real smart player. Certainly not the greatest defensively. I know he's been kind of called out a few times for his lack of effort on the back check a few times, but on the other side of the puck, he is real good. One of the better centers in the league. So if he can be a number 2 center, let's say, on a stronger team, for example, that's just going to make that team that much deeper. I know I saw an article suggesting a few teams that could make good sense for a Scheifele trade. They mentioned the Flyers, the Red Wings, and the Ducks being the most likely teams from the Raiders' point of view, of course, but we're not really sure in Anaheim that it makes a ton of sense. I know that obviously they have a lot of younger players taking over there, becoming the new core in the Ducks organization. So to add somebody who's almost 30 years old, I just don't know that that's a real solid spot for him. I mean, he could fit there with the young players, but I would think they'd probably want somebody a little bit younger if they do go out and get someone. Philly makes sense because that the Flyers don't want to rebuild and that they're going to be looking for players that are experienced to kind of take this team in another direction here. So they're between trades and free agency. I expect Chuck Fletcher and the Flyers to be extremely active. If he hits free agency, I know they're going to go hard after Johnny Gaudreau. That's a fair statement. I have no doubt they will. Whether or not they get him, I don't know. I think the Flames are going to do everything they can to keep him. But it's going to be very expensive between him and Matthew Tkachuk after the seasons they've had to get them both locked up. That's not going to be easy, and we'll see where things go. But if he makes it to free agency, I know the Flyers will be all over Gaudreau and throwing the money at him. So obviously a guy like Scheifele could be of interest as well. But certainly at the same time, though, if you look at the center spots in Philly, Sean Couturier will be back. He can be a number 1 center. You get Kevin Hayes, Mark Scheifele. Do you want Kevin Hayes or Mark Scheifele being your number 3 center making $6-7 million? Probably not. Or maybe do you throw Scheifele on the wing? I don't know. He's always been a center in the NHL, so hard to say. I mean, do I see Scheifele likely getting traded? I think the odds are pretty decent. I think they could get a good return. I think he could be due for a fresh start, and so could Winnipeg. I'm just not sure that the teams mentioned in this article that I was reading really make the most sense, but let me know what your thoughts are. If Mark Scheifele is indeed traded this offseason, where do you think makes the most sense for him to end up for next year and beyond? Let me know down in the comments. We'll discuss further, as well as all the goalie trades. Give me some goalie predictions in the comments as to where you think some of these guys will end up, and we'll discuss that as well. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.